Hello, I'm Mr. Medrano, and I've been an educator for the better part of 10 years. It's a hard job. And I would argue there were many days where I was just at my wit's end, ready to quit. But there was always someone who I could go to, someone really smart, really wise, my grandmother. And there was one time in particular, I remember vividly, it was my second year of teaching. And I reached out and I was like, Grandma, I gotta come see you, I gotta talk to you, like, Ma, please. She said, okay, come over. I show up, I instantly start crying. Not because I am despairing, but because she is doing what every Mexican grandma does, she's cooking chiles. And so I fight through the tears, I tell her what's going on, and then she tells me something that I'll never forget because it kind of shaped how I tackled problems. She said, Mijo, un día no voy a estar aquí y quiero que sigas siendo fuerte. Quiero que estés como la palma, fuerte, firme y inamovible. One day I'm not going to be here, and I want you to be strong, and I want you to be firm, and I want you to be like the palm tree, unmovable. And I think about that quote and how it applies to beyond any personal thing, and how it applies to things that we face as students, parents, educators. And I think also about how we need to apply that to the educational systems in general. We need them to be firm, to stand strong, for our families, for our communities. We need to re-envision how we engage with those stakeholders, because the current model, the current system, what we have is not working. When I think about our students, we are with them 5 days a week, 6 if they sucker you into going onto a competition or a field trip. And I think about how in the post-COVID era, we still have a lot of these students who aren't showing up. I believe in the Learning Policy Institute recently, they said 75% increase in absenteeism, even in the post-COVID era. 75%. Kids are not showing up to school. And one of the things that I believe is that kids are not showing up to school because they don't feel seen. They don't feel like they have a voice. And I remember distinctly there was one student, she always made it a point to masterfully dodge my class. She would all of a sudden have a doctor's appointment, or she would miss the first half of the day, or would she miss the whole day? And it got back to me that a friend of hers was like, oh yeah, no, she skips your class because she don't want to do math. I didn't take that personal. But eventually we had to have like a truancy meeting for her. And we had the meeting, and in the meeting I leveled with her. I was like, I need you to tell me, what is the thing that you need to be successful in my class? And she looked at me and she said, what? And I repeated myself and I waited for her to respond. It was a solid 5 minutes of just waiting. And finally, she said, can you slow down some? She said, and can you keep using the colors like you do when you do the math problems? And she also said, can you let me know when you're going to call on me? Because it makes me really anxious. And I was like, doable, 1000%. And after that moment, after that meeting, after she told me what she needed, we didn't have any issues the rest of the year. And she ended up graduating, exceeding her growth goal. Big deal. And I really think about how that particular moment should happen more often. Kids should feel like they have a voice. Kids should be reminded that they are making a choice to be there and a choice to change how their future looks. We need to change how we interact with our students. And then I think about our families, our caregivers. It's well known that, for me at least, I've had a lot of families who are like, I don't know what to do. 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 And I mentioned that because 40% of families, according to a January 2023 Pew Policy research, said that 40% of our families were worried about the mental health of their students. And when I would inquire about like, so what are we doing at home? What's going on? Sometimes the answer I would get was, I don't know. And that's okay. There was a moment where one school, and I won't name it, but I was in leadership, and there was a student who was giving us continuous behavioral issues. And those behavioral issues made it so that like, hey, we can't have you here, we need mom, we gotta talk about what's going on. Mom would not pick up the phone. Mom would dodge the emails. And finally we had to say like, hey, unfortunately, until you come in and meet with us, your son cannot come back to school. Begrudgingly, she showed up. And we all had our preconceived notions. I'm gonna own it. I was like, this is happening at home. This is happening at home. She don't care. She showed up and then things got real. She told us that she was at a loss because she didn't know how to help her son. She was scared of him. She was scared of his depression. She didn't know whether or not she would come home to a son. And once she shared that with us, you know, when an educator finds a problem and we care about the babies, we come up with a solution. We come in clutch. And that's exactly what we did. We connected her with resources. We made sure there was a safety plan for that student. And then she became his biggest cheerleader, And I think about how if parents felt more empowered to say, I don't know, and can you help me? That we would be able to shift some of the dialogue that's happening and be able to reach more students. I think about how parents need to feel empowered to be like, well, I don't just want to know about what my student's reading, I want to know whether or not my student can read. And that is where I think we need to empower them to say, can my child read? Why do I talk about literacy? 135 million Americans currently, right now, according to the Barbara Bush Institute, are functionally illiterate. And I'll come back to that later. But I want all of my caregivers, my families, my parents to know it is okay to say you don't know and ask for help. And if you are not receiving that support, speak out. Your voice is loud. You deserve to be supported. And then I think about my schools. I'm speaking to every single principal, school leader, whatever your title is. Every single employee at your school is a change-making agent. And in case you forgot that, I'm here to remind you, every single employee at your school is a change-making agent. I think of Miss Anna. Miss Anna was wonderful. She was at my school at KPGLA, and anytime Miss Anna told you something, you listened because she knew what was up. She kept her eyes out. And one day, I was doing my thing, dreading the next data meeting I had, and she goes, Mr. Medrano. I already knew I was going to get the nth degree. I walked over, and she goes, Mr. Medrano, that teacher right there, anytime she's upset with a student, she sends them to the bathroom. I, in that moment, was blown away. I didn't know that. The grade level chair didn't know that. That was not communicated to anybody. In that moment, Miss Anna, our custodian, was more powerful and more insightful than any observation or survey that I had done that semester. Because of what she did, we were able to pull the teacher, the parent, and the child in for a meeting, and we were able to come up with a plan, a restorative meeting, and move forward. That was all made possible with Mrs. Anna, who was often overlooked just because she was a custodian. I know that there was a great woman who once stood in front of a sign just like this, Rita Pearson. Maybe you've heard of her. And she said, every child needs a champion. And in my heart, I know she did not exclude the attendance clerk, the librarian, the custodian, because every single child needs a champion, and every single person in that building can be that champion. So to my teachers, my staff, I say to you, tienes que ser firme, como la palma. You gotta be strong, just like the palm tree. And then to my district leaders, things are in a very interesting place. Educational landscapes are changing, especially here in Texas. I'll speak just on Texas. I heard there's a bill being passed, there's this happening, and all I could think about was another stat from the Barbara Bush Center. And that was, unfortunately, we ranked, I think it's 46th or 48th out of 50 in adult literacy. That's not including the, again, 20% of adults in Texas who are functionally literate. Right now, we need districts to double down on programs that we need desperately. Illiteracy costs this country $2.2 trillion every year. So imagine if we could get districts to buy in and say, we're going to continue to do what's best for our students, for every kid, and we're going to join hands with the community. Because there have been some times where I'm like, is this a district initiative for the district? Or is this an initiative because we asked the community what they wanted and what they want to see for their kids, and we're going to make it happen for them? And I think lastly about how when we're talking about corruption, districts need to be upfront and clear. This happened, and we took care of it, and we continue to stand by the community. We need to feel like we can trust institutions again, because sometimes it feels like it's us versus them. Together, I think that we can all be just like that palm tree, firm, steadfast, unmovable. If you hear anything from me today, hear this. Keep hope alight. If you hear anything from me today, hear me say that education is one of the most noble professions out there. And hear me say that there is a silent, unspoken oath that we are our brother's keeper. We look out for each other. Archbishop Desmond Tutu, may he rest in peace, said, "The price of freedom is eternal vigilance." So keep that vigil. Stem the tide of ignorance. Work to change and reimagine the narrative that we have for our students, our parents, and our districts. Be firm, just like the palm tree. Thank you.